Okay, so I'm going to play our intro here. Okay, folks, we are here. We're having a little problem with Sherry Wise's connection. I'm about to add her to stream. Hopefully, I'll at least get vocal. Hello, Sherry.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you well. Your sound is fine.
Okay, let me see if there's one more thing I can try here.
Okay.
It's like something that tries to hold me up with the technology. Well, maybe we'll go with my voice tonight.
Okay, I think that will be fine. Well, hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
This is Joe Firestone, and this is the MMT and the Public Purpose show. And my guest for tonight is Sherry Wise, and my guest co-host is Matt Waldy.
Hey, everybody.
And as you know, all three of us are fairly deep into MMT, so we expect to have a very good discussion this evening. And what we're going to have a discussion about, Sherry still is going in and out, but what we're going to have a discussion about is given the conclusions of the IPCC adaptation report, what are the MMT-informed policy responses that we would suggest, especially that Sherry would suggest, because but she is our guest for tonight. Hopefully we can get her back and get her stable. Hello, Sherry. Hi, Sherry. You there yet?
I am here.
Good. And we can hear you very well.
Yep.
Okay, so I've introduced the show and I've introduced, the topic. And of course, what we're here to do is to outline the policy response to some of the major conclusions of the IPCC adaptation report. Okay, so that's a tall order, but we're going to do our best, to do it. And since you're the guest on the firing line tonight, oops.
Lost her again.
Lost her again. Okay. We have connection problems tonight. I'm not sure why, but here's Sherry again.
I'm very sorry. I thought maybe if I tried to log help, but then it no. Okay.
Okay, so we'll do the best we can with what we have, of course. And so again, what we're trying to do is to give an appropriate policy response to the conclusions of the adaptation report, the high-level conclusions for policymakers. So since you're the guest on the spot here tonight, I'm going to turn the microphone over to you to say what you would do to answer the policy conclusions of the adaptation report.
Well, you know, it seemed there was a lot to it. I thought what was that they did talk about, the social implications and stuff. I thought that was really a I guess, you know, the more I think about it, the more I think, just the big problem that we have, I think, is that we've let corporations get out of control.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
and I mean, I think we really need to, really seriously look at corporate governance. I think corporate governance is a big problem. We have allowed corporations to basically just run the world. And and clearly, I mean, right now what they're trying to do with this WHO stuff, um, you know, really the corporations are given a charter by by the government of the country that they're in, and those charters really they're social contracts. And never think about the fact that corporations really should be, I mean, they used to be more so in the past, but nowadays we never even think about the fact that corporations really should be good citizens of the country as well, and not just people, but corporations. And corporations, I think that we really need to start thinking about making corporations accountable to the societies that they're in. And you know, there's just so many things that have caused the corporations to get completely out of control. Um, and so it's hard to get them to agree to do anything with respect to climate change. I mean, and it's not just even like the oil companies and other companies that you think of as being big polluters. Look at BlackRock. I mean, they're climate policy, um, because they're basically leaning on governments and trying to say, we don't want costs going up that much, and so me that really we really ought to stop and think about at the very basic level the relationship that corporations have and making some serious changes, starting with the corporations should only exist to benefit society. They should only allow corporations. I mean, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be allowed to have or earn profits. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be allowed, to make money and, make people who invest in the corporations rich even. What I'm saying is those corporations, they need to, you know, recognize that they exist in society because we let them exist. And I think we need to think about that. Um, and
So, Sherry,
I'm sorry, I was rambling.
no, that's quite all right. I don't think you were rambling.
No, I didn't think so either.
I think you were saying something very important.
I agree.
And so, what I wanted to ask was, first of all, corporations here in the United States aren't federally chartered.
Right.
They are chartered by states.
Right.
And even foreign corporations who are operating here have to register in
Hmm.
states
Hmm.
and get a charter from the states to
Correct.
operate here, or they can't do business here.
Right.
So, when a corporation files for a charter, it has to fulfill some um, 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 public purpose,
Hmm.
which the community thinks is a legitimate public purpose.
Hmm.
So perhaps what we need to do, and I wonder if this is possible to do because I haven't been studying my corporate law lately, but but I wonder if it would be enough for us to go after corporations and get them to behave simply by looking at their charter
Hmm.
and insisting that they fulfill the purposes in of their charter. I was actually recalling to them that they do a deal with these states, and the
Hmm.
deal is that they get a charter to operate, which allows them to make a profit, and which allows them to do their businesses, and which allows them to pay salaries to executives and also wages to other people, okay, and which allows their stockholders to make profits, and in return for that, they do agree to be good citizens of the
Hmm.
states in which they're chartered, and
Hmm.
also the other states, okay, in which they operate as foreign corporations.
Hmm.
So,
Well, yeah, but I mean, they're all going to be tied to banks that do business at the Federal Reserve.
yes.
So technically, they are all under congressional control.
Well, not exactly. Of course,
Well,
they all are under congressional control. Also, because of the Interstate Commerce Clause.
yep.
Okay, for that reason, also, it's possible for the federal government to regulate the corporations. But what I'm saying is, or asking, is why isn't it possible for citizens to sue corporations because they're not performing according to terms of their charter? In other words, they don't get the chance to make a profit for free. There's a deal there, there's a
Hmm.
contract there. They have
Right.
to be good citizens. Why can't we simply sue them for their failing to be good citizens? Why, for example, couldn't we sue them just for engaging in politics?
That's a good question. And another question would be, um, one of the things that corporations have been getting away with, um, and it just really ticks me off because it's gotten to the point where, um, basically corporations blackmail states and communities. They come in and they'll say, "Oh, well, we're thinking about putting a plant in this county. What are you going to do for us?" I mean, that's basically nowadays how corporations operate. They want to get tax breaks and they want to get this, that, and the other thing. And, do they ever give guarantees that they're going to employ a certain number of people? I mean, they'll make promises, but do they actually employ that number of people? Do they, is shouldn't be difficult for governments to be able to have some kind of at least estimate what kinds of money these companies should be bringing in, and what the multiplier effects are. But what happens is corporations, they basically pit, states and localities against each other to bid to get their business. I mean, to be able to get their uh, you know businesses in, coming into their community or whatever. And a lot of times then they turn around and they bail a few years later. So and I think we have just allowed this to happen so much that it's essentially like, communities get blackmailed into, corporations trying to attract corporations to come in. I mean, this is there's just so many ways that we have allowed corporations to just take advantage of society, and that's one of the ways. When you think about what did Amazon do? Think about all the stuff that Amazon did when they said they were going to have a second headquarters. Um, Jimmy Dore did a segment on it, and he was talking about that. You know, all these states, they had to submit their development plans for like 10 years out and stuff. So
Mhm.
Amazon was getting all this development information that nobody else was getting. And and then they just basically, they'll finagle and deal, and they'll get as much as they possibly can out of a community. And so
So there is a way in which we can greatly alleviate this situation
mhm,
if we passed federal job guarantee legislation.
mhm,
Mhm.
yep,
Then we would have a situation where we already have people who are earning money at a living wage
mhm,
in a state. So now the big corporations come in, okay, and they say, well, we're going to make 20,000 jobs for you, okay, or 30,000 jobs. Uh, so then the states can say, well, we already have full employment in our state due to
mhm,
the federal job guarantee, and
mhm,
it's full employment at a living wage
mhm, yep,
with good fringe benefits.
mhm,
In other words, if Medicare for all is passed too, that would make things even better.
yeah,
But even if Medicare for all is not passed at the federal level, the federal job guarantee program would provide Medicare for everybody in the federal job guarantee program.
yeah. And you know what else? Joe? It would give states and localities that I might otherwise feel obligated to allow really polluting, companies, or companies that have, really other social problems, that they bring into a community. It would allow a federal jobs guarantee would allow, states and localities to the opportunity to choose the kind of employers they want to bring in, not just, you know, anybody that, they're going to bring in a bunch of jobs and then they'll, plow a mountain up.
You're right, and so those corporations who want to come into a state uh, would then have a much harder time actually bargaining with the state
Yep.
because the
Yep.
state has the jobs. Okay, the jobs are valuable to the state, okay, because the state is getting certain local needs met through these
Right,
particular jobs. So these jobs are producing value for the
right.
states, okay, and the localities. Then the corporations would have to come in and make clear what value they would be delivering with their jobs if they came to the states, and the states would be in a much better position to bargain with them, okay, and to say, hey, look, the activities you're planning for this state, those are going to impose costs of various kinds on us,
Mm-hmm.
environmental costs, ecological costs. Uh, you can't come in here and impose those costs on us. Now we don't need you for the jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in a position to ask you to cover those costs. You can no longer externalize those costs. Now you have to internalize those costs.
Yep.
And then you have
So,
to consider, if you come here and you internalize those costs, are you really going to be able to make a profit?
Mm-hmm.
yep. Well, then you got to go. I'll play the devil's advocate on this one because I totally agree.
Good.
The federal job guarantee is the best, poverty solution that we possibly we'd peg the dollar to full employment. There are a whole bunch of tax breaks and different things that would go along with that. But I'll play devil advocate and say that the money is so large in most of these corporations that are doing this that they will be able to bribe their way out of a lot of those regulations. There needs to be some other enforcement. Whether and that enforcement, of course, is only going to work if it's done for their bottom line or their mobility. So if you say to somebody that you can't, we no longer, the amount of money it's going to cost you to bring in your goods and services from whatever plant you have in Southeast Asia or in Mexico or in Africa, all of a sudden there's a tariff on that. And you're a citizen of the United States, and you're wondering, in order to bring the amount of savings they get for taking that overseas production, which is polluting and doing everything else, and bringing it back here where we can actually control the amount. Or there's more than just one way of regulating this. And even though I have federal job security, this is what I would prefer. I also know the political reality is not. It's harder to get to that point, even than creating these other types of tax incentive regulations that could start to curb because I don't see this anymore as a view of how much can we stop happening. I see it now more as that we need to prepare for it happening.
Yeah,
And so
I
it's it.
same way.
Sorry, go ahead. But that's what so it's a different shift in mind. We're no longer trying to figure out how to regulate them stopping doing it. We have to figure out, well, how much can we lower their usage of it right away? But what bands or ribbons of this planet are we actually going to be able to live in? And realize how much migration is going to have to come into those much smaller areas on this world to live in, so we can cultivate and save as much of humanity as we can. I mean, right now the research shows that we should have large enough bands that will put us up into the 2 or 3 billion mark as being the largest amount we can handle on this planet anymore. Normal population, natural population control, things like education and poverty being eliminated, will bring us down to that level. So I kind of changed my thought, instead of trying to lower emissions and to try and bring down the temperature of the globe, to try and figure out how the maximum amount of people can live at the highest level for what the damage was already caused. We're going to have to deal with over the next 50
So
to
you're
100 years.
thinking we need to have population control policies, but not
Not
heavy,
policies,
not heavy
natural.
natural population control.
Yes, not you're not dictating. What you're doing is you're saying that we need to eliminate poverty. Number one, that brings down population, it doesn't increase. Number two, bring up education. That again brings down population, does not increase. So
Yes,
it is
which,
giving two positives.
but these things, by the way, have been known for a very long time. Like we've
Oh, a
known
long time.
since the 1950s or 1960s.
Yep.
Anyway, that you can bring down the population, through passive means of this kind, which are not active policies of population control.
Yep.
Essentially, they leave it up to people, and then the people voluntarily lower the population.
Yep. Because they have opportunity, they have buy-in, they have an individual's life. They don't need to rely on more children in order to increase their economic, success. I mean, all these different things lead to just a natural response and then of course that leads to better parenting. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of arcs that can take place, even though this horrible disaster that we have caused. Um, in my estimation, when we're staring at India with 50 degree Celsius temperatures, and Spain in May hitting 45 degrees, that Celsius, which is 110, 115 degrees, we are now beyond the point of hoping that we can contain this. It's now what is actually going to be the damage, and
Okay.
how can we survive it?
The population of the Earth right now is 8.5 billion.
Which is in those bands that I was talking about at 2 to 2.5 degree increases is not sustainable.
Right. Okay. So the question is, if we take this basically nation by nation, at least begin to think about it in that way, we already have 1.5 billion Chinese, and we already have 1.4 billion from India.
Mm-hmm.
Those two nations alone.
But figure 50 years is about what we have to bring that population down. That both China and especially China are entering into a middle class, less poverty, more educated, and they're already seeing a large drop. It is a precipitous drop. I don't quite think people understand. It is, when the Nordic countries started educating everybody, their their population shot down in a generation. 20 years, 40 years, and to the point where they needed to bring in Syrian refugees in order. That was why, to sustain their economy. And that's the other problem is, of course, that we're a capitalist country, so we're geared towards constant growth. How do we gear ourselves to realizing that we're the minus, the minus in land area and arable land and everything else is going, move us into a different mindset. And that's I was just trying to move us in, because you guys are right on the nose. Federal job guarantee is the best poverty relief that we can possibly, any country can possibly, attempt. But how do we get there from here? Is because I don't know if we have as much time to politically get the will necessary to create a federal job guarantee as we do about regulations and then helping the rest of the world bring up to certain levels to lower population in order to make migrations less drastic. Because Canada, and when you're talking Northern Hemisphere, half of the United States north through Canada will be habitable. But literally half the United States south may not be
habitable,
and all the way down past the equator until you get close to pretty much Argentina, because we forget that 1.5 degrees is polar.
Yes.
And so it's 20 degrees and 25 degrees the closer you get to the equator. That's the equation. I think when we do ourselves a disservice calling it climate change, and we do a disservice not explaining what 1.5 degrees means to somebody in India or in Africa or in South America.
Right, and we never do explain that.
Nope.
All we do is take the general number, the 1.5 degrees, and say, if we keep it at 1.5 degrees, we're safe.
Yep.
And there are an awful lot of people who are not safe at 1.5 degrees.
Not even half a degree at this point. And then we're discussing the and I hate to bring up because I know we were talking about, and I'm blocking Sherry, so I'm gonna
No, you're fine.
relax.
Don't worry. You're fine.
Because it's the circulation in the North Atlantic, the transfer of cold to hot currents that keeps our planet temperate and in the zone, and that is already slowing down. So if that slows down or stops, which it has in the Earth's history, then everything just, it's caused an ice age before, but it's also caused, global warming, So we don't know what's going to happen. migrations may end up being something we have to deal with in one generation instead of the maybe 3 generations we have right now. Maybe
And
more
so,
like 2.
and so we're going to need all kinds of social policies to handle the migrations.
Yeah, because economically, there's no reason for us to not be able to handle it, since economics is the study of human systems.
Well, not just economics. In other words, there are a lot of other disciplines that are the study, okay, human systems too.
Well, isn't that what economics means, though? Is the study of human systems or patterns or something like that? It would.
Usually it's like the neoclassical definition is study of how people allocate limited resources.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But really, probably a better way to talk about it is it's about how societies allocate resources. Period. We don't have to get into that. The issue is, um, every state, every country has a certain amount of resources available. How do you take care of your people given the resources that you have? And you know, unfortunately, one of the things that's happening with climate change, well, it is happening, and I'm actually seeing this a lot in my job. How much the weather is affecting, food production. It's just, unbelievable. Um, you,
So I wanted to ask you a specific question
mhm,
about that.
mhm.
Okay, specifically, what are the kinds of policies we need to implement to get to a regenerative form um, of agriculture?
Well,
Oh, I heard that deep sigh.
I guess. What do you mean by regenerative form of agriculture?
Well, what I mean by that is doing agriculture in such a way that the soil regenerates.
Uh huh.
So we have healthy soil that's able to produce, and that we're sequestering the carbon again
Mhm.
in the soil,
Mhm.
essentially getting it out of the air and putting it back in the soil.
Mhm.
Doing agriculture in such a way that we save the jungle in the Amazon.
Mhm.
By doing agriculture in such a way that, uh, say, with the use of hemp, that we can do 2 or 3 crops a year and still add CO2 to the soil.
Mhm.
Uh, okay, I'm rambling a little bit on this, but there's a lot of literature on
Yeah.
how you do this kind of agriculture and
Right.
how you should be doing it. And that literature indicates that those ways of doing it are completely opposed to the kind of agriculture we have in this country at this point.
Mhm.
So that suggests we're going to have to implement the kinds of policies that are going to give people incentives to move away from the type of agriculture we do now
Mhm.
to the type of agriculture that's going to sustain the soil and bring the carbon out of the air.
Well, for one thing, it's going to involve, changing some of what we produce. Um,
Oh
so,
yeah.
so so that's going to be a lot of it.
Okay. Say
And
something specific about that, please.
yeah, for instance, like corn is very, that is a crop that hard on the soil. It uses up a lot of fertilizer. Usually, oftentimes, what farmers do is they operate in a rotation So one year they're growing corn, another year they grow soybeans, and soybeans are actually a crop that puts nitrogen back into the soil. And so and so, I mean, that's one kind of thing, is you different rotations of crops that can do more things for the crops. A lot of animal agriculture has been kind of picked on through to uh, oh, greenhouse gases and stuff, but actually you can have animals in a in a healthy ecosystem, because they control a lot of the noxious weeds by eating them, and they fertilize soil and stuff like that. So, a lot of it is gonna just, of course, have to be. I think a lot of it's gonna have to be um, changing to probably um, fit crops, definitely have to fit crops more according to the climate that the crops are grown in, because you have crops that you have things that are grown in California that use up a lot of a lot of water. Same with Arizona. So those places, some of that stuff's going to have to just go, unfortunately. But that is, in fact, what's going to happen, because there's just not going to be enough water for it. And one thing I just found out about, which I think is really interesting. Um, the United States, we import like 90% of our seafood, and we don't really do much for aquaculture. Now, aquaculture can be kind of controversial, because um, some of in the ocean and like pens and things, and so that can create its own set of actually getting to be more and more success with land-based aquaculture, and so raising fish, recirculating tanks and things like that. And one thing that's really pretty interesting is seeing a lot more done with hydroponics, and this is kind of interesting because you can have systems that have basically you're growing crops and raising fish at the same time in the same space, and that can be
Doing this with aquaponics.
yeah, and and it's scalable, so you can do it on a small scale, and so you could even have like places in cities and stuff that know, of this you could maybe set up these tanks and stuff, but there's large scale versions of it, on open land too. But so I think probably need to see some things that we haven't seen before, that we're not used to. I mean, yeah, they're kind of new. And so I think there may be more indoor farming that we see.
Yes.
And because then, like in Europe, they're doing a lot of stuff with vertical farming, and so it's like just different layers of crops, and
The vertical farming is indoor farming.
uh, it can be, yeah, yeah. So,
It can be, but when you say that, you're implying that it also can be outdoor farming.
well, the stuff I've seen with the vertical farming is only don't I guess you could do it outdoor, but it would kind of depend on. Oh no, you can do it outdoor depending on what it is you're doing. So yeah, like aquaponics and stuff that are going is on in Wisconsin, I believe, um, and they're doing like raising salmon and lettuces and stuff. So anyway.
That's great. Yeah, and I've heard some experiments in Manhattan and San Francisco with high rise,
Hmm.
where they take over several floors and are able to produce almost half of the vegetable production of the cities that they're in. So
Wow.
they are very successful, and
Hmm.
I think that I agree with that. That's a future state that will probably feed the specialty vegetables and the things that we actually need to have a diverse menu.
Hmm.
And I agree that corn is is going to be one of those things that you grow in your backyard because you miss it, not because it's grown and cultivated the way it is
Yeah.
now.
Right,
it's
right.
it's not, but I do think that there is, even though I know there's a large amount of push for completely plant-based diets, which I understand and agree with. Our ranching techniques are done just to make sure that we get the full production capacities, because really 1 acre of land has shown can actually produce quite a bit of meat and dairy. It's just we don't bother using that technology. It just
Hmm.
is, we don't bother using a lot of technology that and automation, because it's just not cheap enough to be cost effective yet,
Hmm. Yeah.
which is another way that these things are going to become more is so when I talk about bringing production back into the United States, I mean automated uh,
Hmm.
production where the staff is all highly skilled and educated and gets paid uh, you know a large amount to make sure that these machines are continuing to produce and deliver in the fashion that that they're made to do so, which everybody thinks is going to cut labor. But I saw some statistic that it almost is 1 to 1 compared to what we're doing right now. So the fear of automation being the killer of wages and of employment, I think is the opposite. It's something that we should be trying to get to.
Yeah.
Because
Another
the
th-
fear is unjustified.
Yeah.
Another thing I would say is that um okay, obviously I'm speaking for myself, not as a USDA person, but um you know, we export a lot of food to other countries, and I know, of course our farmers love that. Um but at the same time, it seems to me that a certain amount of what we're doing is, this isn't necessarily these are business decisions, but they're also not just business decisions. The US government uses food as a way of control, and and so if we have other countries dependent on us for food, we have a lot more ability to push them around. And
Oh, so you mean in foreign policy,
yeah, foreign
use it as
policy.
a means of control?
Right, right. And
I see.
and in fact, I mean, I know USDA doesn't wouldn't say this because I mean, this is a State Department thing. But you know, uh, I'm sure I would think that there could be a lot more done for other countries to build up their agriculture. Our foreign policy has actually been discouraging of their agriculture. We tend to want to, uh, because the corporations are controlling controlling this stuff. And
Because corporations are controlling it.
yeah,
So that suggests that we have to make certain political changes to see
mhm,
to it that the corporations are not going to control it anymore.
right,
Okay,
right,
because they're blocking us from helping to create food sovereignty uh,
right,
in other countries,
right,
which
right.
then would lead to stability in international relations.
Yeah, that would
Which
lend
we've used.
itself.
but
Yeah.
we have directly used to keep countries down. That's not a, you're not making conjecture there. That has been done repeatedly. The Banana Republic comes to mind. There, the whole term itself is based around our exploitation of
Mhm.
one commodity from one country, and then being able to take down that commodity and controlling that country. Cuba with sugar,
Yeah.
Mhm.
another problem. And right now we're seeing it with Russian wheat, and it makes us really mad that another country is doing as just like we do and exploiting foreign affairs for their advantage
And for
by
their
using their resources.
and creating inflation, okay, in other
Yep.
countries.
I tell you, I was at the USDA. One of the things I do at my job, um, if there's a, I just deal specifically with the protein sector, and more specifically, usually it's red meat and fish that I deal with, and sometimes poultry. I remember a few years ago, we I can't remember exactly what the issue was, but there was something that Russia had done that we didn't like, and so we said, "Well, you can't have more chicken from us." And we were selling a lot of chicken to them, and so and so what happened was we had all this extra chicken that we had to buy, and then it went to food programs like, school lunches and stuff like that. And so one of the things that I do is I evaluate the economic situation to determine whether or not a buy we need to do a buy. And so, if we need to do a buy, then chicken or a bunch of hamburger or something like that, and it goes to school lunches or it goes to Indian reservations or food banks, things like that. So, but yeah, so we wouldn't let them buy chicken one year. Well, they decided, you know what, we're going to make our own chicken, and so now they're independent, and
Yep.
so we did them a big favor.
Yes, that's true. Mother invention, right? Mother of invention.
you know.
A similar thing happened with Russia because I don't know, 20 years ago or something like that, they weren't a major grain supplier. But when they started feeling pressure, oh, you can't buy our grain or this or that or the other, they decided to become a major grain supplier. And they did it in a very, very short time.
Mhm.
Okay. And Ukraine, of course, was also, it was always the granary, okay, of Russia. That was another reason why they had to fix that problem.
Yeah, I was thought that's what you thought you were talking about was the the end of Ukraine being controlled as Russia's, the Fertile Crescent, their area.
Mhm.
Yes, that did happen directly, and that was one of the last things that Gorbachev set up before Yeltsin took over was the wheat crop. Was it was something ridiculous, the amount of land that they took and just started planting. Now they are the largest in the Middle East by far.
Yeah, they are. Okay. And I think between themselves and by Ukraine, don't they produce 40% of the wheat in the world now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot.
I mean,
Sorry,
it's
go ahead,
huge,
Sherry.
right?
Can they still do that?
Yeah, they can still do it, but because of the war, uh, uh, their wheat is having trouble getting out, and Ukraine's wheat is having trouble getting out as well because the Russians are blocking it,
Oh,
from getting
Oh,
out.
they're taking it. I mean, let's be honest. They're stealing that and sending it off. But now that they control the Russians are controlling the Black Sea ports. Their wheat is getting out. It's just it is the same thing with that as it is with gas. You have to pay with rubles.
Well, that's a good thing, I think.
Oh, Russia is the strongest currency in the world right now.
Yes, I know. Right now, at least.
Right now.
Yeah, but I think it will stay strong though
Oh, for a while. Yes. Yeah, I agree.
for a while because they have things the rest of the world actually needs, and we'll
Well,
have.
and they have a very strong trading partner, and all their access that the United States took away from exports was given right back through the Chinese BRIC system.
Right.
Which
And
is, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that it now gives an example for the rest of the world to not have to deal with sanctions from the United States.
right, and that's a good thing
Mhm.
because it allows for the emergence
Stability.
of just stability, but also a multipolar world.
Yep.
And I think a multipolar world is going to be a healthier world in
Yeah.
terms of politics.
Yep.
Yeah, but somebody's not quite as in charge.
Yes, I know. And I think that's good for the United States too.
It is. Ultimately, it's good for
Time
the United
for us
States
to let
people.
go. Yes, time for us to let go. By the way, I made some suggestions of that kind in some Twitter streams today. I got somebody calling me a traitor. You're a traitor, he says. So I laughed. I did, a lot of rolling on the floor laughing symbols at him.
Yeah. I get a lot of that.
Oh, do you get a lot of you're a traitor?
I do. I get a lot of that. Or Russian Putin liar, or, you know.
Matt, I
Yeah.
think you have a reputation to uphold.
I
Right.
try.
And people can't just go around simply accusing you of being a traitor. You
No.
aren't a political figure, who's widely known.
Nope.
You're just an ordinary citizen. If someone accuses you of being a traitor, you can sue their ass off.
Yeah.
I don't think they realize that. But I
Yeah.
think it is true. For us who don't have any particular big names, there's no protection from the libel laws. I think from time to time, we have to remind people of that. You know,
Yeah. I say, more power to you. For me, it's just water or duck off, water's back. They don't understand what they're saying, or most of the time it's coming from a
Sometimes
place of
they don't
ignorance.
understand what they're saying.
Yeah, they don't understand the ramifications, not only personally, but even factually.
Right. And also legally. In other words, they
Yeah.
don't know
Yep.
what a traitor is from a legal point of view. And they don't care.
No.
I mean, to them, it's
No.
just, they don't like you. They're calling you a bad name.
They want to shut up more than anything else.
Yeah, they're trying to get you to shut up,
Yeah.
which is hard for us. Okay, going forward with this, okay, what are some of the political changes that we're going to make these other changes that we have been talking about? Because the current establishment, okay, in economics is going to politically oppose these changes and try to get, state and local legislation and eventually federal legislation to outlaw some of the things we've been talking about here. So, what kinds of changes from a political point of view are we going to have to make, but to make it possible to do the green things we have to do uh, in order to meet the challenges of the adaptation report?
Well, I think one thing is we need to change our foreign policy. That's when we gotta.
Right, I certainly agree. But how do we change our foreign policy? We have, Tony Blinken in there and
Yep.
his crowd, okay, and this whole group and the Defense Department, and we have
Yeah.
the CIA and what the CIA is doing, and the NSA and all the intelligence agencies. They want a particular foreign policy, and
Mhm.
that but foreign policy is it's just a foreign policy which is very damaging to our futures, okay, and the future of the world. Okay, so we're asking a question of power here. How do we get them out of power and get other people in who are going to run the kind of foreign policy that would be collaborative and that would help everybody?
Dump the economy.
Don't the incumbents. Oh, thanks. I certainly appreciate that. So here's my problem, okay, at the moment, that maybe, you can help everybody with. How are we going to get Dump the Incumbents to be a movement? And you have to understand, but Dump the Incumbents is not only about dumping the incumbents, but also dumping all the challengers that are taking big money as well. How do we start up this movement? Okay, because so far, our program about Dump the Incumbents has not been successful in starting a movement. It's been very slowly growing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's getting more people watching. It's getting more people interested. It's generating more positive comment at this point. But it's still far from generating a movement. So how are we going to do that?
I have been trying to think for years, and sometimes I don't even know if it is possible. Situation to change.
So maybe I should start by asking the question. Okay, if that situation is not possible for us to change, can we survive?
What do we need to survive?
Yeah, I agree that the only way that that's going to happen is if we all give like we gave to Bernie Sanders, starting off with creating a paid activist army that is not centrally controlled, just centrally donated to, where the local municipalities or cities would be able to start organizing different groups and move on to whatever style that they decide they want to run their particular activism with. The problem with that is that everybody wants to be in control. So how do you even start that? How does somebody go, I decide I'm going to go ahead and, I'm going to give to this group and I'm going to let that group apply through a different group saying that they deserve the money. How are they going to spend the money? There's just, there has to be some flash organizations. And I don't think that we have in the United States yet reached the point where we're getting any of that movement. Right now, we're deer in headlights. So we see the oncoming semi that is going to hit us, and we cannot believe or even understand what those two lights and that semi mean. But but we see the bright light. So I think we are just, even the people who understand, and I'm talking personally, I see the semi-tri, I understand its existence, I understand its destructive thing, but really I'm staring at two lights that I don't understand really what's coming at me. I can't feel it. I want to, but I also don't want to have to experience it. And in some respects, I don't know how to start a movement without enough people feeling that and really understanding that. And that it may require a lot more than we're being allowed to experience, because that amount is here. It's now. I just don't think I think we're being held away from it and kept away from it.
How are we being held away and kept away?
The media is not letting us see, the majority of us to see these things, and that those of us who have seen it don't really understand how to get by the cognitive dissonance and the pain that that creates to actually make actions occur. And
Okay, so it comes back again to the corporations because the media are corporations.
they completely are. And as they're, all consolidating, they're becoming more and more like, you talked about Blackstone and Vanguard. Those are the two companies that own pretty much everything in the United States. And they just keep getting more and more consolidated. The monopoly laws have completely been trodden. We don't use them at all anymore. We don't bother even paying attention to them. We actually think they're bad. I mean, we think they're horrible laws now.
Well, there
Yet,
are,
Yes, there are many of us who think that way, but not everybody.
yeah,
no, but
yeah, there's some movement. There's actually some movement in the federal government on the issue of antitrust. There are some people now who are in some important places that are actually starting to take it seriously. Um,
So you're talking about Jonathan Cantor, okay, and Lena,
Lena Khan.
right?
Yep,
Yeah,
yep, yep.
yeah, they are
And
doing some things.
yeah.
And
And
we need
outside,
to shut Larry Summers up then, because he's not doing something about it. He's trying to make apologies for, that's not what's happening. That's not why we have all this rampant inflation, when it is why we have. You don't have corporations across the board reported by the Fed making 25% larger profits than they've ever seen since the 50s, and not consider this inflation price gouging. It's just a cost push inflation that they've gone to the point where they've just weaponized it.
right, and the two main factors are the breakdown of the supply chains, which has to do with globalization and what we did, okay, with globalization, the specialization,
Hmm.
and then the price gouging
Yep.
uh, that they do because of the concentration that's occurred in business and because of the breakdown of supply chains.
Have an excuse.
Have an excuse, and they use it, okay, as an excuse. I've seen estimates that say that those two factors account for something like 93% of the inflation.
Yes, with the price gouging being higher
Yes, with the
than
price
the cost of of logistics, and that some of those supply chain issues were highly exaggerated, and with plenty of stock, and they're just using it and withholding that stock, saying they didn't have replenishments when they had plenty in the warehouse that they could have delivered. And that wasn't just one industry; that was several.
right, and they did that just to price gouge.
Just the price gouge.
Okay, we could fight that with regulations, probably even with current laws,
Yes,
if the
and
current laws were
there should
enforced.
be some will for that. There should be some will for that, right? There should at least a little bit of political will for that.
Yeah, and there's a little political will from Lena Khan and Jonathan Cantor, right?
That would be great.
yeah.
Okay, and outside the federal government, there are people like Dave Dayen and Matt Stoller
Mm.
who are pushing for those kinds of things.
There's also concern about antitrust overseas as well.
Oh
So
yeah,
so there is some positive movement on that, and I think more and more people are starting to become aware that you know that it's not, monopolization is not a good thing. Although a lot of economists still haven't bought into it yet,
no, they haven't.
unfortunately. Oh no,
Well,
I mean
one thing I see an absence of
some have, but
is
uh-huh.
the absence of activism to back the people in government who care about this.
Hmm.
Okay, in other words, they're still approaching it from a top-down point of view. They're getting inside
Yeah,
and they're trying to fix the situation inside. And
right.
while I
By being with money being poured all over them, It's to the point where it's really hard to restrain them, yourself completely from believing that this person who seems to be so gracious and so welcoming and giving so much money and support to you, you start to believe that they're on your side. It isn't that they don't believe you're a good person and think that you have right ideas. It automatically starts to shift your ideas towards supporting the establishment and keeping your job and keeping your status. And I don't blame people for that.
Yeah,
I
keeping
understand it.
this and your family happy.
Yep, that is a total I understand that and it shouldn't. I know a lot of people will punish people and the activists for feeling it, but that's something that has to be accounted for, and that's one thing I think in our community and activism and everything else, we are not accounting for. We are just trying our best to shame people into working through those things. Because honestly, I mean that nobody in office right now is not compromised to one extent or another, or is not corrupted to one extent or another. It's impossible. You can't be a Democrat or a Republican and not be corrupted. Whether you have good ideals to use that corruption or not, if you think the ends justify the means or not, you are corrupted. And that's a hard lesson that I don't think we're ready to fully adopt. We could pretend, two heads of the same and one snake, that kind of thing. But I don't think we quite.
Apart from
Yeah.
all that, there needs to be activism to support
Yes.
the Lena Khans and the Jonathan Cantors and the people
Yeah.
who work for them who
Yeah.
are trying to do something inside. And right now, they're divorced from the activist community.
Is that their choice? Because
Well,
they're trying to make themselves out to be.
I don't.
Well, it's just, they're in government, so they really they can do their job. They can't really be activists. So.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's hard. That's why it's hard to marry the two. It's why they often go their separate ways quite a bit. It's just natural. It's just a normal response to that. I don't blame them for it, but it's hard. We need a Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street type movement where people are regularly there, just like we pay for union dues, we pay for activists to go in there and consistently bargain for social issues and more through that avenue. And we don't have that mentality or understanding that that's what we would be donating for.
So that's an area where the job guarantee, if it's implemented correctly, could really help.
Yep. Oh yeah, it would be the step to the and that would be part of Green New Deal as well. I mean, there's a whole bunch, and then all the other kind of public purpose spending that needs to be done with infrastructure, which is not the same as the federal job guarantee. All these different things would start to happen, but who's going to be the first one to start to turncoat? Because that's really what has to happen to me. There has to be a large amount of the legislators have to turncoat and either totally not respond to party pressure and do what they know for the people, or in my respect, I think I want to know it by them turning independent. The problem with that is they will lose all their funding and they will be out of government within the next political cycle. And that goes back to the ecology and the environmental costs of this. Somebody has to be those people in office that are willing to say, okay, enough is enough. Yes, I'm going to be out of the political sphere in the next election cycle, but I have to start something.
I have to do as much damage as I can while I'm in office.
And that's what we're waiting for. Bernie Sanders really should have ran as an independent in 2020, not even played in the Democrats. Lost, yes, and made Trump president, but would have gotten 5 to 10% of the vote and been able to start a third party.
Yeah, I think he should have run in 2016 after they rigged the election against him.
Oh, yeah, it was proven.
Hell, you rigged it against me. I'm running third party.
And he should have,
I'm
because all
having
we need is that 5 to 10%.
Yeah, I mean, all he needed really then, he was offered the presidential nomination of the Green Party.
Yeah,
He
it should have gone right there.
he could have taken it and gone right there, and then the Green Party would have become strong enough
Hmm.
to actually field and succeed with some candidates.
Yes. Or he could have actually done the activism inside the government for the last, 5 years that he was in there, that we would not have allowed for $40 billion to be rubber stamped to Ukraine, while we're sitting here with not able to feed our babies with formula and other things. The optics of that is unbelievable. No wonder his Biden's rating has gone. But neither here nor there. At 2020, that was the opportunity for a third party to start. It would have created a horrible windstorm of retribution, because it would have led to whose reelection. But at this point, we now know we might have been, number one, a little bit safer without Biden.
Yeah,
And number two, a third party to actually go out there and start to win House of Reps and possibly compete in 2024, 2028. Now it's going to be 2032 before we have any kind of third party power. And that's if we hit somebody like Sanders actually run independent and create the party.
right. And by 2032, of course, it's going to be too late.
It's 2028 is already pushing it. That's just going to be how many people can we save.
I mean, hell, I think 2024 is going to be pushing it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm just saying, as far as we would have some time from 2024 to 2028 to start to actually check those ribbons out and start to develop in the right areas, and start to migrate our own people into the right areas before the rest of the world will start to migrate.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's, we're not there. And unfortunately, I think historically, I'm not going to blame Sanders, because he did a lot to wake a lot of people up. But it was a definite missed opportunity, if he was honestly trying to do what he says he was doing, which he may have just felt like he could push the Democratic Party into the right direction, which is what he said he was going to do, but it wasn't going to work.
All right. And then he didn't, of course.
Yeah, that he didn't.
I mean, he did not. Okay, the American Rescue Plan of the $15 an hour.
No.
He did not play that right.
No, but the people got that because they decided to quit and not go back to work. And that was the only reason why we have some better paying positions. Still not 15 is not minimum wage, but more people are making $15 an hour than were before, because they decided not to come back to work after the end of the COVID restrictions.
It would have been very easy for him, though, because when Schumer took the $15 an hour out of the bill,
Yep.
Sanders could have said to him, "Look, if you take this $15 an hour out of the bill, you put it on the floor.
Yep.
You're going to have a problem with me, because I'm not voting for that bill." And he could have rounded up 4 other senators.
Yeah.
Who would have done the same thing.
Well, he did.
We've got as many people. Okay,
yeah.
So if you want to put the deal together, you have to keep that $15 an hour in that bill and make them take a floor vote against it. And he didn't do that.
No, and he didn't get the opportunity to actually get pharmaceutical, prices dropped, and he actually had large sponsorship for that. There's been a lot of noted failures, and again, I try not to bring that up, because I still think that Sanders overall is at least a decent person trying his best. But
this isn't about Sanders.
Yeah,
us,
but a lot of people take it personally.
And what we have to do is, when people make errors, we have to point out that they've made the errors, whoever they are.
I agree.
It's not a personal thing. We have to recognize those errors so we do not make them again.
No, and I just that's why I don't want to discuss if he's running or anything else at this point. He's not going to he's not going to do what he says he's not going to follow through. And I know that but it's unfortunate.
Okay, so Sherry, have we missed anything we ought to be bringing up?
Well, it's really unfortunate I couldn't come to work because I would really like to show you USDA has it's not just USDA. There's government has a lot of resources.
Yeah,
You know, um, basically we have the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, which
yeah,
is where the Weather Service is, right? But 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 in addition to the Weather Service, in addition to NOAA, the other agencies, have a lot of concern about weather, and one of them, of course, is agriculture. And so there's a lot of information on the USDA website, also on the NOAA website. There's a website called .gov, and it is a mixture of USDA and NOAA, and so anyway, it has a map called the Drought Monitor,
uh,
and it shows half the country is in drought right now. And when you look at the map of the USDA, the drought map, it's pretty much is in drought, and it's the summer, and now, and drought, that doesn't mean that it's just a drought. This is like actually below the normal. They're talking about normal precipitation levels. So we have dry areas, but they've been in drought for years now, and so they're not just dry; they're extra dry. And to the extent that it has caused some shifts in agriculture. Some places longer able to support certain types of agriculture. They don't have enough water, and so it would be I'm fortunate that I can't show you that map because there's a lot of really interesting information on that website, and it just kind of shows just a lot of stuff. So, but I encourage people to like drought.gov and look at, there's also a lot of links in there that you can get all kinds of information. And then, of course, USDA and I think the Geological Service, they have information about climate change and everything. I think we're gonna, all these different problems, and they're all related, and people just wanting to make more money, produce more stuff, just growth, without that sometimes, oh yeah, there you go.
But I hate to interrupt, but I got to get going. I apologize that
Oh,
I'm almost out of battery. I really got to find my cord, and I was trying to find it, but I couldn't find it. So I apologize. This has been really awesome. I really appreciate talking with you guys.
right, and we really appreciated talking with you too, Matt.
Yeah.
Very good.
It was nice.
Thanks
to
a
talk
lot.
with you.
You were great.
Yeah, they really enjoyed it. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See you later, alligator.
Did you put that up? Um,
Yes, I did put
okay,
it. It
okay,
should be right on the screen now.
yeah. If you scroll down a little, you'll be able to see the map.
Okay, I'll scroll down and we'll take a look at. Oh, there's the map. Yeah, abnormally dry,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
moderate
and
drought, severe drought, extreme drought, exceptional drought.
right, yeah.
Look at
So
that exceptional drought area. That's really something.
yeah, yeah.
And lots of Texas in it.
Uh-huh. Yep. And in that area that is in drought right now, which is any of the yellow on up, to dark red, um, that is actually supposed to expand a little by the end of the summer, but with some changes around, some of it being less bad, but some of it being worse. But
Okay.
anyway, well,
Are those the areas that within 20, 30 years are going to be not inhabitable? No longer habitable?
some of them probably are, yeah. Um, I mean, I think probably some of those areas where it's probably going to be worse is where there just isn't, much waterfall, much rainfall to begin with. Like, Texas and Oklahoma, they're probably not going to be as bad because they do get rainfall. It's just right now it's a bad time. But Utah and I mean, I'm not a geologist or weather person, so I can't really say for sure, but yeah, I mean, those are the areas that are most in danger. These are the areas that are most in danger of having water shortages and stuff. And so and some of the agriculture, like for instance cattle, some of the cattle have been moved out of Texas because uh they just they went through years of drought, and it ended up we ended up losing plants because there weren't enough cattle to run through them. And so once the packing plant goes, then that area, it's no longer so anyway, yeah. So the the drought monitor, that stuff's helpful. And also USDA, the Office of Chief Economist, and I can give you their website for you to post on YouTube for this. But they also have and for worldwide agricultural issues as well, groups and things. And so you can get a sense of what's been going on. Australia is an area that's been a problem for a long time, um, with uh, greenhouse. Sorry, with climate change,
Yeah, with
and
fire.
yeah, yeah,
Yes. All the fire in Australia.
yeah. And then ironically, then other times they've had floods, because the rain will come down just incessantly and just flood all kinds of areas. So there have been several years problems with uh, animals dying, either because they got drowned or because they you know didn't have water. Um, another problem that we're seeing in agriculture with respect to climate change is, there's increase in diseases. And this is also something that, when we were talking about food sovereignty, um,
Yes.
you know, international trade's great and does a lot of good things, but one problem is move things around including germs and virus. And so, certainly with global warming, we're seeing more uh, various, animal diseases. And one of the things about animal diseases is, uh, like for instance, wildlife can spread it to. Right now, we have a problem with avian influenza, and that they come about because wild animals, the wild birds, you know, they'll drop feces, and that eventually gets to some animal that eventually ends up getting into um, uh, uh, herds and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, uh, so there's many many ways climate change can mess us up.
Yes.
Um,
You said that there was a particular website that you had in mind, okay, that's very useful.
yeah, that the well, uh, this more to this website. Then there's another one, the Office of Chief of the website for that has maps of culture areas, regions throughout the world.
Yeah. Can you put down the website in the private chat?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Right, and then I can transfer it to
Uh, yeah,
the public chat.
all right. So yeah, regarding what we can do, I it's just it's so discouraging. For years now I've tried to figure out what can we do to try um you know uh, make
The only answer I think is that it starts by understanding
hmm
that we have to have the mass movements
hmm
to transform politics,
hmm
government. Uh, we have to do all we can to make that happen. Okay. Also, dump the incumbents itself, while it relies on the electoral system, is still a mass movement. In other
hmm
words, to execute it, you need a mass movement of people to operate according to a simple set of rules that's going to have a disruptive effect on the current system of politics and the
hmm
current way, okay, of doing things. Okay, so that particular solution is a mass movement solution also. Okay, so I think across the board we have to have different kinds, okay, of mass movements. What
yeah.
some people have called the movement of movements.
Can I ask something?
Yeah, Bonnie.
Why is it governors that are in that area with all the red marks, why is it those governors don't get together and talk with agricultural people on how to improve those areas to change things, change the way people are taking care of the land, what foods can be grown in what areas that would replenish greenery, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay, it used to be the case back in the 80s and the 70s and the 60s. We had a National Governors Association that was quite strong in lobbying Washington. Would come to Washington seeking certain things, okay, in the way of shares of the federal funding, because it was recognized that states uh, were not able to handle the funding that the federal government could handle. So the Governors Association, would bring people to Washington to lobby Congress so they could get a share of the federal funds. But also, the people in the National Governors Association were very active in talking to people in various federal departments that were relevant to them, such as the Department of Agriculture.
Yeah.
In fact, there was a lot of state and local pressure on the Department of Agriculture when I was doing that consulting for the Farmers Home Administration, that I did from 1977 to 1981. Uh, there were a lot of state and local interests that our projects were trying to conciliate and trying to wrap in our programs.
Yeah.
Okay, we would go to various states and do these panel studies. Where prominent people at the state and local level would tell us what the states needed from the Farmers Home Administration. I felt that kind of activity was very productive at that time, but I don't see activity like that actually going on anymore. I mean, it's like the National Governors Association is a very weak structure politically right now. But if that could be resurrected, it would help with what you're talking about. Okay, folks, here is the website for the USDA that Sherry suggests. Okay. So, Sherry, have we missed anything that we have to take care of?
I can't think of anything. It's just, I mean, the government is taking up seriously. I know that the last administration was, didn't want to deal with it, but in fact, people have been working on it for years. There's a lot of different things that could be done. There's for instance, with animals. I mean, you can research and try to develop maybe grasses that cause less burping and stuff like that. There's a lot of things that we can do. But
What I think you're saying is that there's a tremendous amount of knowledge wrapped in the federal government that could be used to alleviate the climate emergency.
right.
But knowledge about that isn't out there. In other words, people don't really know anything about it. And a lot of the research within the federal government simply sits there, okay, and is wasted. Is not actually being used where it needs to be used.
Mm-hmm. And the thing of it is that if corporations want to stop something, they have a lot of power to stop it. And so I think what we need to do. I think the American people, certainly people everywhere, but the American people, I think we need to try to realize that we're stronger than we think we are, and we do have power, but we have to make an effort, and I think we also have to try to not be so um, let's see, what's the word? Maybe easy, not easygoing, but I think we need to start having higher expectations of our officials. I mean, why do we put up with corruption? Why are we? And if you think about it, if you look at it, there's so many ways in which our society has gotten so corrupted. Even academics is pretty corrupt nowadays.
Oh, I know. I've been
Yeah.
seeing that trend for a very long time. Okay, in academics, it's based very much on grants and
Hmm.
contracts. and the kind of money that can be brought into the colleges. Okay,
Mhm.
and then of course, depending on how much money you can bring into the colleges, or the universities, then that gets you high positions, inside of the universities, uh, and all kinds of honors and higher salaries, like chairs, okay, and things like that.
Mhm.
And so the whole system is distorted. It's not simply directed toward the search for knowledge anymore.
Mhm.
It's directed towards the kind of knowledge that is useful to the corporations.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, but a lot of nowadays, a lot of academic people are allowed to take um, uh, to maybe start businesses and stuff. There's been a lot more effort on the part of the government to try to encourage people who like who who make discoveries or come up with innovations based on government. The government's been a lot more willing to let people open up and make money off of this stuff. So people,
Yeah, make money on research
yeah,
that was originally developed in the federal government,
right,
and not actually take a share of that money.
right,
Okay, in
and
other words, the federal government finances both the successes and the failures, but the profits from the successes only go to the private corporations that were in partnership with the federal government.
right, right, and
Yeah,
and that
neoliberalism.
and thing of it is, it's gotten to the point where people now who have benefited from this stuff, they haven't seen a time when that kind of stuff was considered to be unethical. And so I think that we really need to like raise the our ethical standards. And I think people need, I mean that I it may sound silly, but important because there's really so much corruption, and to the point where people just don't even see it. But yet this is part of what has contributed to us having all these problems. I hope that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but
That does make sense.
it's it's all about the money. And in pushing that, that's how we end up destroying the environment because we don't value it. Um,
All right.
and
So again, this all goes back, the importance of money, okay, in the system goes back to the importance of money, in the political system. The money dominates the political system.
Yep.
We have to drive the money out.
Yeah.
We can't do it by passing laws, because the people who pass the laws are beholden to the money. So we have to get it out of the system, by dumping the incumbents and the challengers who are taking the money. The voters have the power to make the money toxic,
Hmm. Yeah.
but the only way they can make it toxic is to vote, to the best of their ability according to rule.
Hmm.
If somebody takes the money, whatever you think about them,
Hmm.
otherwise is not important. You got to get rid of them if they
Hmm.
take the money, because sooner or later they're going to respond to the money and they're going to be bought.
I think the thing is that people like you and me and all of us that are involved in this issue with MMT and the various related issues. I think mainly what we have to do is just keep asking hard questions, and so that helping people to understand that we're living in now, they're not really a times that we're living in, we're in a very corrupt and broken period, and so we really, people need to start saying, I expect more out of my life. I expect more out of my country. I expect more out of my society. And
Yeah, I expect more out of my politicians.
yep.
There's an article that appeared today or yesterday. I'm not certain. It's from Current Affairs, and the name of it is title of it is "The Left is Losing Because We're Not Confrontational Enough." The article was written by Jordan Ballag. It's a very long article. But Jordan Ballag is a young man still in college who wrote this really very, very excellent article. Okay, and it's an argument basically for getting much tougher with our politicians.
Yeah.
Okay, especially the ones who say they're progressive,
Mm-hmm.
but who will not fight. Tomorrow, the in-depth show is going to be about this article. It's a very long article, and there won't really be time to discuss anything else. I've been trying to get the author to come on the in-depth show tomorrow, but I don't know if I've succeeded yet. But anyway, I've been working hard on it. I haven't gotten a response from him. He's shy. He's young, and he hasn't had experience in coming on shows.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried to encourage him to come on, but I don't think I succeeded. Uh, what I think I'll do is just to schedule a show, about his article and send him the guest link.
Mm-hmm.
And if he wants to come on, he can join us.
Mm-hmm.
But I sure would like to have him on because it's a really great article.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, I'm going to put the link in the chat so you can get it. Okay, it's in the public chat. I can put it in the private chat if you want it there as well.
No, that's okay because I can see it afterwards.
Yeah, you can see it afterwards because one of the easiest places to see it is probably just going to be Facebook.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
It's in the chat on Facebook. Okay, so thank you very much for coming and
Sure.
for all your thoughts. I think this was a wonderful conversation.
Well, it's always an interesting time, isn't it, Joe? Getting together and talking. I'm just very, the other reason I'm disappointed about my camera not showing up is Fran knitted me a beret and I'm wearing it.
Oh my God, I'd love to see that.
I'm so mad. So I'll have to take a picture. I'm going to take a picture, but I haven't. So anyway, but I put my own special touch, a little pink flamingo on it. So.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, Fran's berets are wonderful.
Yeah. It fit perfectly. It was very nice. So anyway, yeah, I'm sorry I didn't get to show her my beret.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. Well, you
So,
have to come back soon
yeah, and one
show
of these.
off your red beret.
Well, definitely have to come on again sometime. So, anyway, yeah. Well, yeah, it was a nice chat.
Okay, thanks for coming. If you'd like to stay for, the comments and things like that, then you certainly are welcome.
Well, I think I'm gonna get off, but I'll still listen. I'll get off, but I'll still listen. So
Okay.
anyway, nice to talk to you, Joe. Take care.
Nice to talk to you too, Sherry. Good night.
Good night.
Okay, folks, I'm gonna sort of go through this a little sketchily, but I'll see what thoughts occur to you during the show. What I should probably do is to give some indications. I'm looking at the Real Clear Politics site at this point, and some notable results. Brian Kemp won the primary. He was not Trump's choice, but he won the primary over Perdue for governor, the GOP primary, by 73 to 24. So that is a notable result from the from the Republican side in Georgia. Now, Herschel Walker won the nomination of the Republicans for the Senate in Georgia. He's the former football player. And he won by heavily, 69.5 to 13.6. Not quite as big a vote as Brian Kemp had. He was 73.0 to 22.4. So Walker is going to be running then in the fall for the Republicans. Now, Raffensperger, who's the guy in Georgia who stood up to Trump, actually won his race against Jody Heiss by 51.2 to 34.1. So he won pretty well. That was another defeat for Trump because Trump hates Raffensperger. He really hates him because he stood up to him. Okay, so Trump got a victory in the Walker election, but he was against both Kemp, and Raffensperger, and it looks like they're going to still be there. In Arkansas, saw Senator Boozman, who's a Republican, won the nomination with 57.7% of the vote. Okay, I'm not going to read the Alabama results. I don't know much about the people in Alabama anyway. I suppose a natural tendency to just write off Alabama as hopelessly lost, to democracy. Anyway, the Georgia Democrats District 7, by Lucy McBath, won that primary pretty handily, 63.7 to 30.6. In Texas, the nomination for Attorney General on the Republican side went to Paxton. I think he's a real Neanderthal. But he won handily by 68.1 to 31.9. Now, there were two important races from a progressive point of view in Texas. Actually, there were three. I don't see result for the third one, but in the Texas Congressional District 15, it was, I think the guy's name is Ruben. They don't give the first names here. Okay, so but anyway, Ramirez has 51.0% of the vote. Okay, and Vallejo, Michelle Vallejo, who was a very progressive candidate, really strong, had 49.0%. So it's only 51 to 49. The only 61% has been counted yet. I don't know where it's come from. The race has not been called. Okay, so Michelle Vallejo still has a chance. She's only 2 points behind in percentage, but the number of votes is 6332 to 6,085. So we're looking at 250 votes actually separating her from a win. And with 82% of the vote, Jessica Cisneros is now ahead of Henry Cuellar by 51.6% to 48.4%. That is good news. In terms of votes, however, it is close to 1,000 votes, okay, margin. So Cuellar still has plenty of opportunity to close. But right now, Jessica Cisneros is winning, which is very excellent news for the progressives, because, of course, in her race, there's been a huge dumping of money against her and a very big turnout. Like that was Texas District 28, and there's a turnout of like 31,000 votes there. By comparison, in Texas District 15, the turnout is only about 12,400 votes. So that's a huge difference. In other words, the districts are probably roughly the same size, okay, in population. But of course, I'm looking at only 61% of the votes counted, District 15, 82% of the votes counted in District 28. So there's still 40% to go in District 15, but only 18% to go in District 28. Now, there's another race that's important. I forget which district that is, but it's but Claudia Zapata is running, and she's also very progressive. She's being supported by Sema Hernandez. I'll be going over some of these results also tomorrow on dumping incumbents. I'm sorry, not tomorrow, but on Thursday. Okay, Ezra will be there to help, I'm sure, and Lisa should be back on Thursday. She won't be back tomorrow night, but she should be back on Thursday, I think. So we'll be going over these votes then as well. In Minnesota, Democratic District 1, there is somebody by the name of Ettinger. I don't know who he is, but he had 60.4% of the vote. I think he's probably the establishment candidate. And in Minnesota District 1, there's Munson, who has 38.7% of the vote, and Finstad has 36.1% of the vote. So that is very close. There's less than 500 votes separating the two candidates in District 1. Let me see if there are any more results from Texas, because it says full results from Texas, so maybe I'll be able to see how Claudia Zapata did. Now, Ruben Ramirez leads by 1.98% with an estimated 61.5% of votes counted. Oh, this is wonderful news. But Claudia Zapata wins There was an okay, Claudia Zapata wins. The race was called at 9:51, so she won big, and she's really a progressive candidate. She's a good candidate. I think it was unexpected that she would win so handily. It doesn't say how much of the vote was counted for her. In District 28 with Jessica Cisneros, she now leads by 5.68 percentage points with an estimated 84.8% of votes counted. I'm beginning to think that Cuellar doesn't have enough in the way of running room to catch up. Of course, it remains to be seen. That race has not been called yet. Okay, in the Ramirez Vallejo race, only 61.5% of the votes have been counted, okay, and Michelle Vallejo is behind by 1.8 percentage points, but she has a lot of room to catch up. Okay, now there's another woman, Jasmine Crockett, who is really doing very, very well in her district. She's not been called the winner yet. She doesn't seem to me to be very progressive, but she'll definitely be a member of the CPC and claim to be a progressive. And I think she's going to be fairly progressive. But her name is Jasmine Crockett, and she leads by 20.74 percentage points with an estimated 74.6% of the votes that counted. So gee, I'm sorry, I've lost a pill here that I have to take. Honey, can you get me another one of those pills? Thank you. District 28 just changed, and it swung back to Henry Cuellar, but he leads by only half a percentage points with an estimated 90% of votes counted. So it looks like there's still plenty of running room for Jessica Ramirez. So that is looking good, but it's looking better for Henry Cuellar now. He does have a lead again. That just changed as I'm sitting here. So the count is going on further. We have to remember that Greg Casar won his primary in a heavily Democratic district. He is very progressive. So Claudia Zapata is very progressive. That's two. If Jessica Cisneros can win, that would be like maybe 3 new squad members going into Congress from Texas alone. That's a pretty good result. But as I say, Henry Cuellar is leading again by a small amount, and we don't know how that is going to turn out yet. So that's a preview of the results we'll be talking about then on Thursday. So now I'll go back to the comments. Sorry to go away from the comments like that, but go by the hellos here. Brandy says, my heart is broken. I can't watch it. Just glad my kids are out for the summer. Oh, this must be about the Texas shooting. Yeah, 18 kids in Texas were killed by a shooter.
Oh, no.
It's just awful. Ghostot says J.B. Font of RBN held up a copy of the deficit myth today during a live stream and said, "Don't get me started. Go start." But to get me off his back. Okay, Ghostot says I needed that today. So J.B. Font finally read the deficit myth. That's good news. Sandy says, hello, hi, Kay, Dolores, Steve, Jeffrey, Brandy, Joe, Matt, Sherry, and Bonnie.
Hi.
Thank you, Sandy. Bonnie says hi if you're still here. Now, wasn't that a nice conversation I had with Sherry and Matt?
Yeah.
That really worked out well. Who is Matt? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought everybody knew Matt. Okay, Matt, okay, is our information technology director. Okay, Kerberos. He's also very well educated. Okay, in MMT, very strong MMT. I'm sorry not to properly introduce him. I think I forgot because he's kind of a close friend. In other words, we've been working together for years now, and I just, sort of thought, well, everybody here knows Matt, right? Anyway, Matt Waldy is a very important part of our Kerberos crew and very knowledgeable, okay, when it comes to MMT. In fact, I'm going to have him on, I think, okay, in a few weeks to talk some more about what he was talking about tonight, because I think he's been absorbing a lot of literature on the climate emergency, and that we need to hear a lot more from him that we heard about tonight. I don't know why I'm getting these beeps on my system. I don't think that's coming from my phone. I suppose it could be, but I'm not worried about it anyway. And Ghostot says MAT plus FJG, all the things. Well, the job guarantee is part of MMT. It's at the core of MMT. You cannot have MMT based policy and not have the job guarantee, because that's an essential part of it. If you doubt that, I have a series on it I wrote back in 2012 for Daily Costs. It's about a 16 installment series on it, and it explains why the job guarantee is at the core, okay, of MMT. Steve Wolfman says, I need to know if Jessica Cisneros is winning. Steve, she was winning. I'll take another quick look. Hasn't changed since I last reported. Henry Cuellar has a small lead. Okay, but Michelle Vallejo still has a shot with only 61.5% of the votes counting, as I said before. And Claudia Zapata was an unexpected easy win in her district, and she is very, very good. Very, very good. It was so good to see her win. Summer Hernandez, who ran for the Senate a couple of times ago in Texas and is an absolutely wonderful progressive, was Claudia's campaign manager. She did a wonderful job with that. Anyway, Steve Wolford said MMT equals nice things for the people. Well, if policy is based, okay, on MMT and is in accord with a public purpose, yes, it would mean really good stuff. And Lana says, Kay, Matt is our IT man. Yes. Sandy says, Matt, the IT man, sounds like a magazine cover. And doesn't Matt have a beautiful voice, folks? He has such a beautiful voice, so deep. Steve Wolfbrand says, federal job guarantee, Texas 28, Henry Cuellar, 51.7%, Jessica Cisneros, 48.3%. Well, Jessica Cisneros is now a lot closer than that. Sandy says it was in the 90s and humid this past weekend in New Jersey this past weekend. Yeah, it was very hot here too. Sandy says it felt like August, not May. That's right, it felt like August here too. Though July is often very hot here too. Whereas here, it's a little to the west of Washington, D.C. And Brandy says Sarah Huckabee Sanders got called for the Republican governor's race, 82%. That's probably a race where Trump got what he wanted, right? Lana says Fadl Kaboub also talks about aquaponics. Not sure the spelling. You spelled it correctly, Lana. And yes, he does talk about aquaponics. In fact, it was from him that I learned to talk about aquaponics. Sandy says hydroponics. I don't think hydroponics is quite the same, okay, as aquaponics because, well, I'm not sure why it's not exactly the same, but I think it's not exactly the same. I'm not sure the distinction. Brandy says our last race, we ran a Democrat. 2018 only got 30% of the vote under Trump, so we're screwed. Sandy says you can grow things in those shoe hanging bags. Sandy says, and on your fence, cases, guess I'll have to wait till tomorrow to see what happened in elections today. No, if you stay around, I'll come back to it. Okay, I'll come back to it in just a little while and see what's changed. Brandy says, Natalie James is in the lead over Dan Wakefield. She is the one who has missed 2 FEC filing deadlines for the Democratic primary. Why the hell can she run if she missed 2 filing deadlines for the damn primary? Why doesn't that disqualify her? Steve says, I'm back. Welcome back. Lana says, we know you are a traitor. And she smiles. Yeah, I'm a traitor. TRADER. And Ghost Start says, FYI, BRICS, Brazil, Russia, by Russia, Iran, China. It's actually BRICS. The S stands for Union of South Africa, folks. So there are 5 nations in BRICS. Lana says, Matt is a Putin asset. Thank you, Steve. I'm sure Matt would be happy to know that, Lana. Brandy says, I'm right there with Matt. I stir it in his Facebook comments. She smiles. Brandy smiles. Laura says, I am also with Matt and Brandy, which means you're also with me. Matt, by the way, has only 1 T, not 2, because his name is Matthew with 1 T. You guys saw what Biden said about China. Yeah, I think so, but I don't take that too seriously. About Taiwan, yeah, about Taiwan. Because it says 100% bots here then. Brandy says, yes, go start. We're all bots. Lana says, bots don't need showers. Ghost Art says, Lana Del hates the clock. That was my little secret. Sandy says, we need Lana's billboards. Lots of people like the slogan, dumping incumbents. I've been adding that take big money donations, not in the hashtag. Then we need to explain the plan, Joe. Still need your short take. How short a take do you need? I had a short version of the presentation, was only about 6 slides. You need something shorter than that? I'll work on it. Lana says, yes, Sandy, and bumper stickers, etc., T-shirts. Sandy says, absolutely. Gusta said, got to see if Black Rock Stone would make me an offer, but it seems they only buy in bulk. Sandy says BRB. And Ghostot says, Sherry sounds like Zoya from RBN. Brilliant. I hope Sherry saw that comment. Sandy says, Zoya is awesome. Yes, she is. And Steve Wolfbrand, look at what happened to Cynthia McKinney. They called it for John Boozman, which is better than the alternative. In other words, you're saying it's better than the Trumpist. Ghostot says, but John Boozman's pretty bad, isn't he? Ghostot says, they won't give up 5%. Ask Jill Stein. She says, I honestly believe Jill Stein got over 5%. That shit was rigged. Everyone I know voted for Jill. Ghostot said, I noticed a bunch of union wins today. I think they are. I think they weren't there Starbucks wins. Ghostot, Constitution Article 1, Section 8, the government shall mint and tax to provision for the defense and general welfare of the people. No, that's not what Article 1, Section 8 says. That's not a quote from Article 1, Section 8. But Article 1, Section 8 does provide the capability for the government to mint and tax, actually for the government to create money, not only to mint it, but also to create the cash, and over the years has been interpreted by the court to include creation of reserves, which are additions to bank balances. Can someone else bring up the map? Yeah, I brought up the map. And Dolores says, great seeing you again, Matt. Thank you, Matt.
Nice beard.
Huh?
He has a nice beard.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, Matt's a very handsome fella. And Sandy said, and says, thanks. Steve says, pretty much everything west of the Rockies. I wouldn't say half of the country, but maybe 40%. Lana says, Minnesota was also yellow, but we had some rain recently. Ghostot says, fire season. Ghostot says, India relaxed coal restrictions due to heat-related shortages. Steve Wolfram said, sandstorms in Iraq, fires in Russia, heat waves in India, Pakistan, permafrost thawing, coral reefs dying. So I go on. Sure, why not? Nukes will solve everything, even hurricanes. Steve says, capitalism depends on never-ending growth, not possible on our overcreated finite planet. Well, I'm sure never-ending growth is impossible, but the way we measure growth, in GDP, an awful lot of growth can occur, which doesn't involve the use of any more resources than we're using now. Basically, growth in services that do not involve any resources. And Costa says, I think maybe bury the incumbents might catch on quicker. Hey, Steve, that's a very good suggestion. Maybe we'll add that to dump the incumbents, bury the incumbents. And Lana says, maybe if Alan Grayson gets back into Congress, he and Katie Porter and maybe some others with a big mouth can we whip the people into a few frenzied. If Grayson's willing to do that, I mean, in the last time he was in Congress, he said some great things, but he was always caving to Pelosi. Ghostot says, PSA, ICE is on the shooter scene, and you know they're not there to help because he's already dead. Gee. Laura says, thank you, Sherry, for a great discussion. Sandy says, thank you, Sherry. And Brandy says, at least Boozman voted against the 40 billion. Oh, yeah, that's right. He did.
That 40 billion could help a lot of poor people here.
Yeah, it could really help with the housing crisis. I scrolled down too quickly, so I'm going back up. And Susan Smith says, can I donate to the Patreon? Sure, you see the Patreon right up there, patreon.com/Joe_Firestone. Thank you, Susan. Brandy says a local news channel called it for Natalie James over Dan Winfield. I'm sorry to hear that. Very sorry to hear that. I really liked Dan a lot. Still like him a lot. And he's still alive, right? Lana says, thanks, Joe and Sherry. And Lana says, Fran, where is Fran? I don't know. Fran is often busy on Tuesday. So she might have had something else to do today. Dostart says, good vibe. Sylvia Curran says, who's that girl in the back? I'm not sure what you mean, Sylvia. Oh, that just walked by? Oh, that's my wife, Bonnie. My wife's name, okay, is Bonnie. And most people who are veterans here know her very well by now. And Steve Wolfman says, Cisneros pulled ahead. She pulled ahead for a little while. Now let's see if we'll check in a few minutes and see if she's back ahead. I hope she is. Susan says, for real, she a jump scare? I don't know what that means. You all saw that ghost in the back, or was it just me? And Sylvia says, I'm getting anxious. Susan Smith says, I saw that, Sylvia Current. Stop ignoring us. I'm not trying to ignore you. I usually do the comments at the end, that's all. Brandy Weaver says, a lot of Dems voted in the Republican primary in Arkansas because Jan Morgan is more dangerous than Boozman. She used to be a Fox News hack. Oh, okay. Susan Smith says, can I donate to the Patreon? Sure. There's the Patreon. And Lana Dell says, MN1 is Angie Craig. And Lana says, that's Johnny's area. Lana says, you talking about the Republicans? Lana says, oops, Angie Craig is MN2, sorry. I didn't have all the results there when I was reading. Brandy says, I'm not surprised Chris Jones got the Dem nomination for governor, but I'm still not happy he won. He will lose the general. Lana says, Steve, really? Really on a deficit myth? Steve smiles. And Lana says, I met Matt at the first MMT conference. And Steve says, Matt made a good point about the global population needing to come down, and also a very good point about how to bring it down without offending anyone. Ghostart says, Lana Dell hates the clock. Yep. So Sabby, Nick, JB, JC are all aware now. That's excellent. That's good. Lana says, love it, Steve. Brandy says, Princess Matt is awesome. He's the one I got the article from that I sent you, Joe, about the biolabs. Oh, thank you, Brandy. Brandy says, I don't know, Joe. She is the state party favorite, her and Jones. Lana says, we need to have a video to share for dumping incumbents. Please. Okay, are you looking for... Okay, so you want a video I've already done and just send you the link to use. And Ghostot says that Brandy Weaver, what did you find out? Can you post a link? Fiorella's in Colombia covering elections, so I doubt she'll be following up anytime soon. I need to go over her stream again. Brandy says at least Boozman voted against the $40 billion. Jan Morgan is a racist Trumper. She openly discriminates against the Middle Eastern people, which make up a large percent of our university international students in Arkansas. Sandy says Bonnie is the bomb. Sandy, I completely agree. Bonnie is the bomb.
Thank you.
Sandy says, I love that idea, Lana. Brandy says, my husband works with the Graduate and International School. Great. Steve says, I think torture the incumbents is even catchier than bury the incumbents. I don't know if we could get away with that, Steve. I think bury the incumbents is probably safe. Ghost that says, I'm trying to reduce A1SA to the lowest common denominator. Sandy says, Bonnie is the bomb. Lana says, we like Bonnie. Steve Wolfbrand says, you're onto something. Oh, that's Ghost Dot says to Steve Wolfbrand, you're onto something. And Lana says, I don't see comments from Sylvia or Susan. They were making comments, Sylvia or Susan were probably making comments from Facebook. Yeah, they were making Facebook comments. That's why you can't see the comments from Facebook. But that's it. I've gone through all the comments. Thank you for all the comments, especially the one about Bonnie being the bomb.
Yeah, thank you.
Whatever video you prefer has to be kind of short. Hashtag dump the incumbents. I might have to do a separate video and post it. I may have to do what we call, well, we have, some MMT minis. Maybe we need to do some dump the incumbents minis. We could do that probably pretty fast. And Steve asked me to check the Cisneros results again, which I will do. Let me see. Let me get a refresh of this page and see. Henry Cuellar is now leading by 1 percentage points with an estimated 90% of votes counted. So there's still 10% of votes in there. Jasmine Crockett won her race. It was called at 11:11. Claudia Zapata won her race. That was called at 9:51. So there's one halfway progressive and one full progressive that won. Okay, in the Ruben Ramirez, and Michelle Vallejo race, he is ahead by 1.98 percentage points with an estimated 67.7% of votes counted. Still plenty of votes out there for Michelle to get. She is very much alive. I think since Henry Cuellar leads by 1 percentage points, that it's also true that Jessica Cisneros is alive. So we have to see that. So let's see. Okay.
That's it.
So those are the last official statistics from Real Clear Politics. Uh, let me see what's at Politico. Maybe Politico will have something more recent. Okay. I'm still trying to get a reading on Jessica Cisneros, see if it's any different. It'll take me just a minute longer as I leaf through these. Texas has 28 districts. Okay, Michelle Vallejo is behind by 2 points with 67.7% of the vote in. There's nothing more recent from her. Texas 15th district. Let me leaf through to the 28th district. Okay, Cuellar is about a point ahead, 50.5 to 49.5, but in votes, that's let's see, 212 and 207. Cuellar is 419 votes ahead at this point. So it's still very close. 90% of the expected vote, okay, is in at this point. There's still probably opportunity for Jessica to catch up in that race. But there's nothing more recent than what, okay, I've given you here. So thank you for tuning in. So thank you for tuning in. And I'll see you tomorrow night when the topic will be it will probably be, is the left confrontational enough? Will probably be my topic. Just so the title will be a little shorter and not, give YouTube trouble. But topic will be that very long article by Jordan Ballag, a very comprehensive job he did on why the left should be more confrontational. Of course, I certainly agree with that. So there's going to be a lot of discussion of that tomorrow. And of course, that discussion is going to relate to dumping incumbents as well. So that's where we are. I am now going to call it a night. But thank you all for coming. Thank you for staying. I'll see you tomorrow.